Nobody else is hungry? No? Don't be thinking. Charlotte says I can't be thinking about food right. Thank you, Charlotte. If you hear growling, I'll move the microphone up a little bit. Chapter 8. So we'll just start in verse 1 and read down a little bit. Soon afterwards, he began going around from one city and village, this is Jesus, to another, proclaiming and preaching the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him. And also some women who had been healed of evil spirits and sickness. Mary, who was called Magdalene, from whom the 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Chuza, Herod's steward, and Susanna, and many others who were contributing to their support out of their private means. When a large crowd was come together, and those from the various cities were journeying to him, he spoke by way of parable. And we're going to hold up there for just a second, and we're going to start back up here toward the beginning. If you go back to verse 2, who was it? Did you notice? Who's the noted crowd here around Jesus? Women. Jesus has a following of women that are listening to him, and they're noted here, and they are also his what? They're supporting his ministry. Why do you think Luke spells that out here in chapter 8 with a Gentile audience listening? Well, women are important too. That's exactly why he's pointing it out, because in the Jewish tradition, women were put to the back seat, and you be back here, and us men are going to do, Now, God does instruct in the worship that men take the lead, but that doesn't mean that we push our women to the back of the auditorium. That's not what that's about. Jesus is pointing out here, the women were following Jesus. The women were supporting his ministry. And you know what? I can tell you this of being the preacher, and boy, could Justin. Matter of fact, if we had Justin here today, that boy, we put him under the wings of the women of this congregation. You ladies took care of Justin, and you know what? Anytime I need help too, guess who's taking care of me? These ladies. They're one of the first ones. So I got a question for you men. Why are we so hard-headed? Why has our wives always got to kind of give us a pull back to center? Don't get any ideas, Tara. Just tune me out here. There's something about listening to, we can sit here and discuss the theological point of this, and I'm always listening when a lady speaks up and tells how she sees it, because it's often something I've overlooked. Do you men find that? I do. What do you think about that, Charlotte? Where you at? That's a good idea? Yeah. We need to listen to women. Thank you for, hey, I'm on note to self. Okay. So now we're going to get into the parable of the sower, and I'm hoping that we can spend some time thinking about what Jesus wants us to gain from this. Colby talked about this on Wednesday night. We're going to think about it just a little bit more. So that'll be verses 4 through 8. When a large crowd had come together and those from the various cities were journeying to him, he spoke by way of parable. Okay? The sower went out to sow his seed. And as he sowed, some fell beside the road, and it was trampled underfoot, and the birds of the air ate it up. Other seeds fell on rocky soil, and as soon as it grew up, it withered away, because it had no moisture. Other seeds fell among the thorns, and thorns grew up with it and choked it out. Other seeds fell into the good soil and grew up and produced a crop 100 times as great. And he said these things as he said these things, he would call out, "Who has an ear to hear, let him hear." I want to think, okay, what point did Colby make on Wednesday night that I thought was really good? Colby made the point that a lot of times he had been a picker instead of a planter. He kind of had the picker mindset instead of the planter mindset. In other words, his focus was, who can I baptize? How can I get them in the water? That's an important thing, but he said, I need to be focused on planting seed because it's God that'll give them. Well, I like that. That was a really powerful message to me, and I thought, well, that's got to be our focus. There will be no crop unless the seed gets planted. Does that make sense? There'll be no crop unless the seed gets planted. So Colby made a real good point from the scripture. But I thought about something, and Pat and I talked about this earlier, or it got brought up when we was eating lunch with Roy the other day, somewhere in there. It got brought up that, what about tending the soil? Now, he doesn't really talk about that here, but in the discussion of this, I wondered, since we got rocky ground, fertile soil, and we got ground that's got thistles and thorns and all that business, let me ask you a question. Do we have any responsibility regarding the soil? Dan, that's a loaded question, Dan. I don't know how to answer that. Need to fertilize it. Why? You put fertilizer in the soil, you're putting food in there so that when you put the seed in there, the seed got something to latch onto, right? So what kind of food would we cultivate, spiritually speaking, what kind of food are we going to try to inject into the soil so the seed can grow? God's word, huh? Oh, so in other words, when your grandfather came, you had to clear the pasture out, take out the roots of the trees and clear the field so that the crop can grow. And Christy was going to say something. What were you going to say? No? Okay. Huh? The truth? You have to provide the truth. So, now, it could be this. I can just go casting the seed. Wherever it falls, it falls. And then I can say, God, it's all your responsibility because I'm just casting. I mean, I could do that. And sometimes when I ain't got time, and I cast and seed all the time, But I'm also trying to tend my soil. Now, I'm going to give you, for instance, okay? There are people in this community that I want to share Jesus with. This is a farm community. This is my type of place. I'm that type of person. If you don't know me and you walk up to me and try to get in my world and share the gospel with me, no. Not no because I don't want to hear it, but no because you know what? You haven't even got to be friends with me yet. There's a certain cultivating the soil that happens, especially in this type of community where we're farmers, where we're rural people, I've been cultivating soil, trying to show people respect so that when I do talk about God, that they will be receptive to that. So I've taken it that I should tend the soil a little bit, plant a little food, a little fertilizer, maybe take the weed. Now, you know what? If I just meet somebody and I go to de-weeding their pasture, they might not appreciate that. I got to gain their respect a little bit. I got to think. The Lord called me to think about what I'm doing. Well, is it important to help take some of the weeds out of the pasture? You're going to plant a kingdom seed right next to a thistle bush that's going to shade out when you're talking about Jesus, somebody, you're going to talk about that thistle bush, aren't you? You got to go where they're at. Meet them where they have need. Meet them how they understand life. If I go to a baker and I start talking to them about spark plugs and head gaskets, are they going to connect with that? No, because they're a baker. I got to talk to them about flour, rise time, instant yeast versus, you know that's a thing? What does that mean, instant yeast? It never works that way. You talk about that sort of stuff with them. Hey, what's that rising all about? Hey, can you get into a discussion about Jesus about that? Well, you know, Jesus rose from the tomb in 3 days. That yeast is only taking 3 minutes. Oh, 3. There must be something. You meet them where they are and talk to them about how they understand. Because you know what? Their understanding of this world is just as important as mine. And that's how they process information. And that's how we can open the door. I just thought to talk about. Do you see that as a part of it? This text does not say, go tend the soil. But implicit in there, do you see the importance of that? I do. But I'm not giving you thus saith the Lord here. I'm just saying, hey, we're called to be stewards of the word and think about. That's why Paul will say to expose sin. Because if you're going to try to teach somebody about Jesus and they think they can just keep on sinning so that grace may abound, Romans chapter 6 and verse 1, then you're teaching them something. That's a gospel that I think is not going to work for them. Are we farmers? Now, we got a farm. Jim Hogan sitting at the back there. He knows about this dirt farming. He knows about cultivating the soil. His son, David Hogan, we was eating lunch the other day, and David said, we were talking about fertilizer, interesting enough. Yeah, guys talk about all kinds of things. He was talking about fertilizer, and that he'd put some dry fertilizer out, and as opposed to some liquid fertilizer, right? Okay, and he took a little bit of a gamble, as it were, as to whether or not that was going to work. He was talking about the need to introduce fertilizer in the soil to prepare the field to grow the crop. He's preparing the dirt. I think all of you are natural at this because y'all are country people. I don't know what city people are going to do on the day of the Lord because I don't understand city people because I'm not a city people. I love the fact that a traffic jam in Porter is 4 cars. It does my heart good because I understand this. So how do you work the spiritual dirt? Discuss.
Well, it starts off by just what you said. We've got to gain their confidence. We've got to be around them. We can't just ignore them and then jump on them and try to shove the gospel down their throat. If you're not in their lives, or at least around them where they know you and respect you, and then you're not going to win them over. You're not going to be able to talk to them.
And you got to be genuine. When you come knock on my door, I can smell disingenuous a mile away. I'll lock the gate before you even get to my driveway. If you're not genuine about sharing the Lord, the message won't come across, right? But you got to stir the hearts. So I got dirt for my garden beds that I've been showing y'all. And Miss Martha, I'm going to... Yeah. So I've been showing these pictures how I made these raised beds so I could pick the grass easier and all. And I put potting soil on top. I was so proud of myself. And by the way, my plants are actually outside now and they're doing pretty good. Martha told me, last week, she says, Dan, I like it when people say, Dan. She said, potting soil is not the same thing as just regular gardening soil. And I thought, I didn't think about that. Yeah, it is kind of all wood chippy. But I'd been preparing the soil, but I told Martha, I said, I actually did okay because I blended it in the dirt, so that's something. I still have, it would have been better if I'd have used the right conditioner to condition this. So I'm a work in progress, right? But I'm thinking, so then I moved my plants this week out to the garden planters. And I dug a hole. The plants are that deep. I dug a hole that much more deep. And I sprinkled some fertilizer down on the bottom of there. And then I put a little layer of dirt over that, and then I sprinkled a little bit more fertilizer, a little bit more dirt, and then I put my plant on top of there. I'm getting that soil ready for super tomatoes. You'll know, because my plan is I'm going to bring my excess produce up to share with you. So you'll know if my soil prep did. Now, did you know that what I should have done when I began that I'm missing? Did you catch what I should? Did you know what I was supposed to do to prepare the soil? You get a jar of that dirt. You take it to the OSU Extension office, right? Is that right, Jim Hogan? You ever do that? You get a jar of dirt and you take it to the OSU Extension and they analyze it. And they say, you need some more mushroom dirt, or you need some more of this, or phosphates, or nitrate. So I missed that step. Well, I actually knew that step, and I neglected that step. What does that mean? Why do you think I neglected that step? Because what? I wish that's why I neglected this. He said, because you have faith. That's not why. That's why I should have neglected this step. That is not why I neglected. I neglected the step because I was too busy. It takes time to get a jar of dirt. It takes time to drive it to the OSU Extension office. And it costs $15. That's what it cost last time I did it, right? I neglected a step. So when I get my tomatoes that's this big, instead of that big, I've got some responsibility in that, right?
Could be because the answer was going to cost you money.
Oh, that was definitely part of it. I'm watching pennies from my garden because I'm thinking, how many tomatoes am I going to have to produce? Anyway, I'm chasing a rabbit. What do you do to prepare a spiritual garden? Prepare the soil. You know what? I'm going to suggest something to you. If you want to share the gospel with someone, ask them questions about how they understand it. Don't ever belittle something that someone else believes or thinks. Ask them, how do you see that? And if they say something and you don't see it that way, or you think it doesn't run true with the Bible, how does that work? I'll just ask them another question, see? How does that work? And you're listening to them. But if you jump into a conversation like you got the keys to the kingdom, you're devaluing another person. That soil's going to get real hard real quick in a hurry, right? And thorny and thistly. You listen to them. I think that's preparing. And analyze the soil. You can listen to another person and say, hey, this is how they see things. This is how they understand things. And a lot of times you can find something in common to talk to them, and you can get down in there and root in on that point and say, well, what if this worked instead of that? Well, how would that be? You're showing respect, and Ms. Trish.
I think maybe we get a little overexcited sometimes and want the outcome. Like you plant your seeds too early. You didn't check what the soil needed. You didn't do the preparation because you wanted the tomatoes.
Because as Colby said, I want to be a picker.
Right. You spend more time finding out what that person needs.
I dream at night about picking my vegetables. And you mentioned something I forgot to mention. I planted all my stuff too early. I did. Did you know that? You're not supposed to put that stuff out. Okay, so most of my stuff you're not supposed to put out to April the 11th. I did not know that when I planted the seeds in my house. Then my stuff got so big that I had to make a decision. Now I've got all these beautiful zucchini and okra and cucumbers and tomatoes. They're all outside. Last night, blowing wind, and I'm like, no! And then my zucchinis, I've got a pole sticking next to each one so I can tie it up because you know what that means? I can't put a bucket over them. I've not really planned well. I planted too early because I was thinking too much about the harvest. At harvest time, if my tomatoes do not produce, I can go right down here to Livesay Orchard and I can buy their replacements. But you know what? You can't go buy a soul. There's no replacements, right? What can you do to cultivate the soil a little bit in your relationships to help people be receptive to the gospel? What can you do? Love. If people don't know you love them, they don't care what you got to say. If you're going to talk about Jesus, he's the loving one of all, right? Let me ask you a question. Do we have time to love? I'm on a schedule. That's because I'm English. I've got a schedule to keep. I don't have time to, hey, you just know I love you. Brother Ty, you just know I love you. I don't have time for you. Is that sharing love? What does it say when someone makes time for you? They get in your space, in your world, they listen to what's important to you, and they look at you in your eyes. They listen instead of me thinking about the next thing I'm going to say when you say something, I'm listening to what you're saying. We don't have much of that today, do we? Because we've got schedules. How do you cultivate your soil? You know what Rob said in his seminar to us? He said, invite them over for dinner. Church, if you want to cultivate the soil, get them at your dinner table. John, that speaks to my heart. Does it speak to your heart? You and I have already had lunch. We're talking about this. We're thinking about lunch, right? Oh.
When you have somebody at a dinner table and you ask them to do a Bible study and they tell you they're not much for organized religion, what do you tell them?
He said, when you got somebody at your dinner table and you ask them to have a Bible study and they say, I'm not much for organized religion, what do you tell them? So I'll just ask that to all of y'all. What do you tell them? Let's do that. What do we tell them?
I wouldn't tell them anything yet. I'd say why.
Did you? I'd listen to him. He said I wouldn't tell them nothing. I'd ask them why. What's going on there?
Because you don't know what that really means.
What does that mean? What in the world does that mean? You know what? In one sense, I could say I'm not about organized religion either. But in the sense that I know what time to come down to the building to have service, I want some organization there. I mean, what are we talking about? But whatever that person said is important to them, and ask them, what does that mean to you? What? And you know, you might find an old thorn buried there that just might need to be uprooted or plucked, or something just need to be listened to. You know, we don't pluck all the thorns. Sometimes we become pluckers. We find somebody, and we think, oh, I got to pull that thorn out. Even if it pulls out their liver and their kidneys with it, we're just going to extract it from. Hey, sometimes we just got to be slow and gentle. Let a person figure it out. You take a horse to the water and you say drink and they ain't ready to drink, and you take the horse's head and you under that horse don't care for you. That horse don't care for. Here's the water. If a horse ain't ready to drink, we're not going to take their head and shove it. But we can be that when we become pickers, when that's all that's on our mind. We want to share the heart of Jesus because the heart of Jesus convicts people to say, what must I do? Or here's water, what hindereth me? See how I got that right, King James Version? Here's water, what hindereth me to be baptized? Show them. So cultivate the soul. Will they always come up with the right answer? Remember my friend Johnny, the atheist? He's still Johnny the atheist. I planted the seed, did the best I could. Maybe now the next person will come along and help him a little bit more. We have 1 minute left. Are there any, does anyone have a thought or hey, I'm reminded in this planning business of 1 Corinthians 13. It says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I am only, to quote the NIV, a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. Love is what? 1 Corinthians 13 says love is patient, love is kind, it is not rude, it does not boast, it is not arrogant, and I may have missed one in there somewhere. Terry says I'm in the right neighborhood. Love never fails. So, evangelism, tending the dirt, love, that Tara mentioned. Love is important. Thank you guys for coming. Hey, don't ever give up on it. Just plant the seed and be prayerful about the seed.